All right, good morning. It is the top of the hour, so I'm going to get started since we've got a lot to cover and I want to make sure we leave time for questions at the end. I'm Rebecca Gibbs. I'm GBS's Population Health Coordinator, and I'm here for our second week of our meal prep mini series. I am so excited to talk about this again. I know last week, if you missed it, we talked a lot about kind of food safety, grocery shopping trips, things like that, kind of as a get ready for this week. But if you missed last week, you can still watch this week and you won't be lost or missing anything. So we're excited to have you here, excited to have a bunch of people on. So as I said last week and again in the beginning, I love meal prep. This is my favorite part of meal prep is how to make it easy, how to make it accessible. And it's the only way I survive without having to eat out all the time because my life is crazy. My schedule's all over the place. My husband's schedule is different than my schedule. And I hope that you guys can find something that will help you on your meal prep or your food journey. And we'll get started. We are recording this. We will send it out and then feel free to throw any questions in the chat or the Q&A and I will address them all at the end. So kind of what we're going to go over this week is the basics of meal planning. I always like to start about asking questions and kind of evaluating where we're at, doing a little assessment, so to say, of where are we at, where can we grow, what's realistic. So with that, we'll talk about different questions you want to ask yourself as you're starting to meal prep or even before you start to see if it's a good fit for you. Different containers and vessels and the pros and cons behind them, because there's so many options out there, it can be very overwhelming. And then I like to touch on a few other useful supplies and tools that I've found over the years of meal prepping, talking to friends, family, coworkers, of what everybody uses. And then we'll dive into creating your own personalized plan for your meals, how to plan that, how to assemble them, some tips to save you time, and then making it social and adapting and setting goals that are realistic for you because everybody's meal prep experience is different. And I find that something that being dynamic and being able to change and adjust to what's going to fit best for you is a skill that can help out a lot. So with that, when we're starting out, when you're picking supplies, when you're picking meals, everything like that is what fits into your lifestyle. What's going to work for you? How often do you want to meal prep? For me, I like to do big batches. So I can do a day or two of meal prepping and that'll last me for maybe a month or one day a week. For me to meal prep multiple times a week, it doesn't really work. And then depending on the meal, even once a month can be too much. I like to do my things in bulk. That might not work for everybody if you're limited on the space you have in your cupboards, your fridge, your freezer, things like that. I'm very fortunate to have an extra freezer or two that I can fill up with food, so I can do a month's worth of food at a time. And not everybody has that. I know I have a lot of friends and family who have the one freezer, so doing something for a week at a time is more realistic. Some of the containers I have take up a lot of space in my cupboards. My lunch containers take up half a cupboard for the ones that I like. If you don't have that space, trying to find something different may be a better fit. Next, thinking about how you're reheating and transporting your food to work, to school, to kids' soccer practice, wherever it is that you're taking your food to. Is it somewhere that you have access to a microwave, a toaster oven, something like that? Or maybe you're looking for a dinner meal. Do you have a crock pot or something that you can turn on and leave all day? Or is that something you're going to need to cook when you get home? And then where are you going as you're transporting that food? Is it something that you can throw in a bag and not worry about? Or something, if it's soup, do you have a good container that's going to make sure it doesn't leak? All the things like that are things to start thinking about. And another part of this too is with your lifestyle, what can you utilize that you already have? This is a theme that I'll touch on multiple times, is using what you have. Do you, it's not always easy or feasible to go out and buy a bunch of new things. So if there's something that you have that you can use, trying to work that in is going to be a great way to save money, save space, and I think save some brain power too. And that's both food and containers with that. I always love using up what's in my pantry when I can. And then the other half of this is what will encourage you to meal prep. If you have a bunch of extra dishes to do throughout the week because of your meal prep, is that gonna make you grouchy and say, oh, I just have so many extra dishes, I really don't want to do this? Or is that something that, hey, I'm gonna throw it in my dishwasher and not care? My husband does the dishes in my house, so that doesn't affect me selfishly. So I don't mind having a bunch of extra dishes because I can know that they're going to be taken care of without adding a burden to my plate. Next, looking if you can find appropriately sized containers for my meals and snacks. So is the size of my container going to fit what I need? Can I find one that's the right size, whether it be big or small, or fits into my backpack, things like that. Next, looking at what meals will you follow through on making and eating? So with this, are you the type of person that's going to eat the same meal every day for lunch for a week, or do you need some variety? Are you going to buy a container or a Tupperware that's designed specifically for a salad, where it's got room for your lettuce or your greens down below, and then your toppings separate than your dressing so you can dump it all and mix it fresh? Is that good, or are you never going to eat a salad? Do you like salads? And things to think about before you buy that. And with this, looking at different containers with dividers. I know some people that in my life that do not like their foods to touch. If they touch, they cannot eat them. This is people I know of all ages. So is that going to be helpful if you can divide up your food and keep it separate? Or is that going to be annoying when you are going to clean that? All the things to consider and think about as you're starting with this and what you're thinking about. We'll talk about some ways you can get around food touching with containers without dividers in a minute as well. Talking a little bit more about these containers, the different pros and cons of disposable versus reusable. So with disposable containers, it's nice because there's no cleanup. You eat, you heat up, you throw away, you're done. It is cheaper in the beginning, but it can add up over time. So I can get a small pan or a throwaway container for maybe 25 cents each, but that's an ongoing cost that's going to kind of be never ending if I keep on throwing them away. They're also not as environmentally friendly. So if you're trying to kind of reduce your kind of footprint on the planet and everything, we want to make sure that that's something that we're considering in. For me, sometimes with this, I know that space-wise, I can store 100 small containers in a lot less space than I could 100 big containers. So my meals that I'm putting in my freezer for a long-term use are usually in a disposable container. I also like to think of this as the containers on that and the space on that, the kind of footprint of using up disposable products is less than if I were to go out and buy a meal to go somewhere, where I would get the same container plus a bag, plus plastic silverware, plus a napkin, plus whatever else is coming with that. And so I like to think of it that way as a way to say, this is fine if it's something that's harder to justify in your brain, because I know sometimes my brain says that to me. These are often, like I said, aluminum foil pans, disposable plastic containers. I call them deli containers a lot of the time. And then things like Ziploc bags and other zip top bags that you can put all your food in, freeze it, put it in your fridge, dump it, and go. The other type of reusable containers, they're more expensive up front, but it's a one and done cost until they either wear out, you break them, or need to replace them. Most often they don't last forever, but they will last for quite a few years. It's a little bit more maintenance for these to wash, store, carry them back and forth. So it's just a little bit more work. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the storage space can be a little bit higher when you're not using them. But they do have that little bit more sustainable and eco-friendly side to them. With these, you're looking at different glass, plastic, stainless steel options, and each of those have their pros and cons. So glass containers tend to be more expensive initially, but they're going to be some of the ones that last the longest. Most often, they're usually microwave, oven, and dishwasher safe, which is what I love. And then they come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Downside is they can be more fragile or breakable. They can't go straight from a freezer to a hot oven that will break glass pans, and then you're left with no food and a big mess to clean up. Oftentimes they're BPA free, they're transparent so you can see what's in them. It's no mystery meal. They're a little bit heavier, but they can be leak proof as well, depending on the lid and the container with that. The other thing that I really like about glass containers is that they're non-porous, and that means they're not going to absorb the color and the flavor of the food. So if I'm heating up some leftover pasta, I'm not going to have a red stained container afterwards that has a slight taste of marinara anytime I put anything else in it. Stainless steel containers tend to be a little bit more lightweight. They're very durable, but it's not something that you can put in the microwave or dishwasher. For me, that's something that is a deal breaker because most often I'm heating in a microwave, but I know some people really like that steel look, that steel feel. It's great if you're like camping or backpacking or things like that. And then finally with plastic containers, the thing to watch out for on them is making sure that if you want something that's dishwasher or microwave safe, to just check and make sure that the brand is microwave or dishwasher safe. If not, it gets kind of funky. The shape cannot hold very well. I've seen many shrunken water bottles and containers that they get thrown in the dishwasher and they actually shrink because of the hot environment there. So checking in on that before you're doing that, they can absorb those colors and flavors, like I mentioned that glass doesn't, but they tend to be lighter weight, less breakable, they're more inexpensive, and they tend to take up less space when you're packing them in your cupboards and things like that. They also come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but the hard part with this is finding freezer-safe plastic containers can be tricky as well. If you get a non-freezer safe plastic container, oftentimes you can freeze in them and it's fine. But if you bump them on a corner or something like that, they're a lot more likely to break. So again, just reading the requirements or the factors that are going into those plastic containers to make sure they're going to fit your lifestyle and what you're looking for out of a container. Next, I want to talk about some helpful tools. So these are all things that I've either had or haven't had over the years. None of them are deal breakers. None of them are a must-have. I would say out of anything, the most helpful when I'm cooking things in bags is a bag holder. It's a stand that you can kind of put the ends of your Ziploc bag in. It holds it open so you can dump things in. That and my permanent marker are going to be two of my best friends so that we can label everything. You can also buy actual labels to stick on that you can either have print on them, you can write on them. I like that I do have a label printer, so I like that I can type it in. If I'm making 10 of the same thing, I can have it print out and I don't have to label it and write down the cooking instructions and things like that 10 times. Vacuum sealers are great. I almost always use the pre-made bags because I am too lazy to make a bag myself with that. They have the long rolls that you can make your own bag sizes, but I find I can usually do what I need to with the pre-made bag. Super cubes are silicone storage containers that are designed specifically for your freezer for meal prep. So they're kind of like a silicone ice cube tray that's designed for bigger portions with the meals. They have different sizes. They've got lids. They were on Shark Tank. They're a great product. They recently came out with like a casserole dish that fits your meal portion perfectly in there. So that's definitely a fun one if you want something that's dedicated just for that. Also things like a notepad, whatever your way of planning is, whether that's a spreadsheet, a notepad, a sticky note, a whiteboard on your fridge or your on like in your pantry, on your counter, whatever's going to help you keep track of this. And I also like it for my family members knowing what's up on the menu. What are we eating this week? What do we have available? Other things, condiment and dressing cups to bring different dressings or sauces with you. Silicone cups to separate your foods. So this is a way if a divided container does not work for you, or you don't want to have dealing with cleaning it, or it's not always the right size, is getting a silicone cupcake liner and using that to help separate foods. If you tip it over, it definitely, unless you get a lidded one, it won't stay in place, but it can help keep things separate otherwise. Obviously, we talked about different containers. I also love using Instant Pots, slow cookers, a smart oven it's a brand called Sous Vide. It's something that for me, my day is often too long for a slow cooker meal where I dump it in and it cooks for 6 to 8 hours. Sometimes I'm gone for 10 hours between traffic on my way to and from work, an errand I have to run, and that will often overcook some of my foods. So the sous vide oven is really cool because it'll actually refrigerate your foods and then you can set a timer for it to cook. So say I want to have my dinner ready at 6:30 and it takes 30 minutes to cook. After refrigerating it all day, at 6 o'clock, it'll turn it on and cook it for 30 minutes. And then it's ready to go hot when you get home. Very cool, very niche, very kind of robot oven-y, but if that's something that fits in your lifestyle, it's a great option. They do even make meals that you can just scan and load in. There's a few other brands out there. That's just the one that I'm most familiar with. And then finally, you can also buy into meal prep services. There's a ton of different subscription boxes or even a lot of places locally that you can have help and support having those meals prepped and delivered to your home. So it's very hands-off. That tends to be a little bit more expensive than doing it yourself, but if that's how it is, I think of your time versus your money. How much is your time worth to you when you're looking at things like that? Next, this is my favorite, is making the plan and then making the food. So as you're creating a plan, few questions you want to ask yourself and look for. First off, how many meals do you need? And this is again looking at your capacity. As you're looking at meals, we typically eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you need snacks. it may not be realistic for you to have a meal plan and a meal prep made for all 3 meals in the day. Maybe just start with one, or say, I want to make sure I've got healthy snacks ready to go. And that's a great starting point. As I'm looking at this and I look at, say, a week at a time, as I'm meal planning from my meal prepped food, I think, do I have any plans to eat out or social events that I'm not going to be home for around mealtime? I think about, does my family eat leftovers? My husband does not. So I try to plan a different meal for every day as opposed to having the same meal for a couple days in a row. But with that, I try to find things that I can use for multiple meals, so it's a little bit less work. So if I'm using chicken one day in maybe a soup or a salad or as a main dish, can I use that chicken the next day in my lunch or as a different way for dinner? One of our favorite ways to do this is we make protein quesadillas with our leftover meats from the week from other meals, because we can hodgepodge different meal leftovers together and it tastes like a whole new thing. With it, as you're thinking about this, what are you actually going to eat? Is there something that you know is easy to make, that you can reheat easily and your family will eat it reheated? Or maybe not trying a new recipe in a big batch until you know you like it. I've done that before where I was like, oh, this recipe sounds amazing. I'm going to make a big batch of it and then I'll freeze the extra. And we ended up not loving it. And that was a hard lesson to learn because we did not want to eat it over and over again. We ended up sharing it with family, but I would rather have had that food in my freezer. With this, looking at what you already have that you can use in the pantry, in the freezer, in your fridge. Another thing I like to do is create a theme for each day of the week. So Monday, we're having breakfast for dinner. Tuesday's pizza night. Wednesday is tacos, etc., etc. And that's something that can make it easy for everybody to know the general theme of what's having. It takes down a few decisions that you have to make and just makes it simple. It makes it easy to plan on because you know what's coming. And that's something that you can rotate if your family's okay with doing that. And you can easily change up the flavor profiles of all of those. With that, trying to get your family involved, ask them what they want to eat, what they want to do, how can they help out is another great way to make sure the food's going to be happily received instead of met with groans of complaint of, I don't like that, I don't want that, because they'll have been involved. And then finally, I've mentioned this a few times, is how much time do you have and not biting off more than you can chew? So what's realistic for you to prep? How does your schedule look like during the day? Do you have time to cook something and throw something in the oven, or are you needing something that's going to be hot and ready when you're home? With that, I always like to say, if there's something that I know my family will eat and I can make a double batch of it and freeze the rest for later, that's something that I will almost always do if I can, because it's the same amount of cook, the same amount of prep, same amount of time, but it gets me 2 meals instead of one. The other thing with this is this year we've started doing ingredient meal prep instead of full meal prep. And that's where we have ingredients on hand. So I have different proteins pre-cooked and different side dishes pre-cooked that we can easily reheat, as opposed to a meal that's all set in one. So rather than having my chicken and rice combined in one container, I have a container of rice and a container of chicken so that we can change the sauces, the dressings, whatever it is, and make a bunch of different combos from the same food. And again, that's just something that's worked for us. It may be something that you can consider that still definitely counts as meal prep. Next, you're going to assemble your meals. So I'm all about saving time. I'm all about saving mess. I love the idea of the mise en place, which is everything in its place. If you've seen cooking shows or you're familiar with kitchen things, you might have heard that. And what this means is you're prepping everything before you actually really do anything with your food and assemble the meals itself. So with that, I like to have a clean table, clean countertops, and be able to lay everything out. So I have my recipes printed out. I'm a paper girl. I like to have them printed so I can see them. I can shuffle them around. I'm not having to touch my phone and change screens and deal with the chaos of that. So I do that. I have my labels made for my containers, or I've written on them, whatever it is. And I always make sure to include your cooking or your reheating instructions on that, so you're not trying to remember how long it's going to take to cook at what temperature in the oven. Then I lay out all my containers for each recipe. So whether that be I put my bags in my bag holders, I lay out my foil pans, I open up my glass containers for lunches and have them open and ready to go. That way I'm not fumbling with anything or trying to find space for it amongst all the food. I've got them laid out and that space is reserved. Then I take all my ingredients and I organize them by recipe. So if I know that I'm going to be using onions in 3 different recipes and they're all diced, I'm going to start by saying, okay, here's what I need. I need an onion here, here, and here. And I do that with all of the canned goods, the proteins, the sauces, any spices. Whatever I can organize by pile, I do. Then I open up all the jars. I open up all the cans. I open up all the bags. I cut open my protein from the packet at the store. Whatever it is, I've got it open so I'm not fumbling with opening things one off here or there. Typically, I'm not going to have them open long enough to have any food safety issues or anything like that. And then that's when I start to prepare all the ingredients. I chop, I slice, I dice, whatever it is, and I put those in a bowl for each recipe so everything is all measured out and ready to go. If I'm using the same spice in multiple meals, I'll do all the spice measuring at once for that same spice. If you're splitting the onion between the 2 meals, I'll cut it, measure it, and put it in those piles. That way, as you're assembling your food, you can put it down kind of in an assembly line where you say, okay, I'm dumping everything in this bag, I'm stirring it up. I'm putting everything in this casserole dish and I'm mixing it. And instead of going all over the place and being chaotic, it just really organizes and streamlines that. Along with this, I try to make sure I'm cleaning as I go. So as I'm done with a cutting board, I'm done with some ingredients, I try to put it away or put all of my ingredients out of the way, say, this is done, move it on. This is done, move it on. That way it's less overwhelming. Sometimes I'll even pause after I've done all of my chopping and slicing, and I'll put all those dishes away in the dishwasher, in the sink, just so I'm not having to trip over them or find space. I love having the extra space when I can have it. With this, another fun way to save time, work together, get some variety of foods is to do a meal prep party with your friends. So with that, sometimes I've done it multiple different ways. My friend group does this anytime anybody is having a baby, is moving, anything like that, that we want to give them some food in their freezer that they don't have to think about. So we've done it where we all split up the grocery shopping. So everybody brings, our most common way is everybody brings enough meals for everybody coming, the ingredients for it. So if there's 5 of us there, I'm buying enough ingredients for the meal that I've chosen to make 5 times. Then as we're doing that, we do all of that mise en place, all that prep work together. We usually put on music or a movie in the background and talk and catch up. And then we kind of break up in 2 different groups, and we do 2 meals at a time where everybody's assembling the same meals, and then everybody goes home with 5 different meals, which is really fun. We've tried some really great new recipes that I don't think I ever would have thought to do. And it's a great time to kind of just have an excuse to catch up as well. We've got some people who are really good at cutting things, some people who say, I don't want to touch the raw meat. And that's how we divide up the tasks and things like that. Sometimes it's fun to do a little taste test of the recipes. So we'll bring one that's cooked and then people can try it out and say, ooh, I want a little bit more of this spice. Ooh, that's a little, I want to change this up for the future, or make sure that they like it before they take it home. This can also be a great opportunity to take advantage of bulk buying prices. So if you wouldn't use a bulk purchase at, like, say, a Costco or a Sam's Club, and you're like, I will never use this much myself, but if you're splitting the meals up around everybody else, you may be able to have 5 different people use that entire bag of rice or whatever it is that you want to buy in bulk. My other favorite time-saving hack is to use catering services. And this is something that I like because it's no mess, it's not cooking. I literally order a catering meal from a restaurant. So I'll do this at Mexican restaurants for a burrito bar, where I order the tortillas, I order the rice, I order the beans, I order the meat. Usually I'll buy cheese at the store just because it is a little bit cheaper, dressing, sauces, whatever, and I make my own burritos. And I literally do 0 dishes because everything's disposable. I throw it away. And I found that that's usually a lot cheaper than buying, say, 15 of a burrito and freezing it yourself. It's a really fun way to do it. You can do it at really any restaurant that has a catering menu. It's a way to bulk buy, still get some hands-on time to do that, make your own portions, but saves a lot of money. With that, as you're meal prepping and going through, you want to make sure, at the end of the week or the end of your time frame that you've set to meal prep is asking yourself, did you make the right amount of food? Were the portions okay, or do you need to change up how much or little you're putting in your containers? Did your meals stay fresh? Were you still willing to eat what you made at the beginning of the week by the end of the week, especially if you're doing the same meal day after day? For me, I have a salad almost every day for lunch. It's simple, it's easy, I don't have to think about it, but I try to change up my proteins or my dressings so that I'm not going, oh, this again by the end of the week. And then if life throws you a curveball, were you able to adapt? Was it something that worked out with your schedule? Think about what would you change going forward as you're looking at the next week or your next meal prep session. What can you do different? What's going to make your life easier or better? And then, is meal prep actually working for you? Is it causing you more stress? Or is it something that's reducing your stress? Some people I know, they say they try, and it just never works for them. That's fine too. Meal prep is not for everybody. And then another thing I'd like to throw in is, how do you want to reward yourself for accomplishing your goals? Whether it's, I tried this out, I found it didn't work, and that's great, or I meal prepped for a week. For me, I love getting a new cute container to put my food in. I love being organized. Maybe it's a new color of labels for my label maker, or trying a new food that maybe is a little bit more expensive and not in the normal budget. So look at rewarding yourself and celebrating your accomplishments with that. So I know that's a really short crash course. We have a lot of great resources. This link will also go out in our follow-up email with the recordings. But these have a bunch of resources in there to help keep your kitchen sustainable, kind of the food safety we talked about last week, and then a list of all these meal prep resources, including a few of my favorite websites that have meal recipes or even plans that you can either get free or for purchase to help you as you're meal prepping and planning. So you can either scan the QR code or this will go out. And then it looks like we've got a lot of great things in the chat, so I'm going to pop in there for our last few minutes. So sorry, it'll take me a second to scroll through, but I'm going to read these. As a beginner on food prep, I like to make larger dinners for the next day for both my husband and I, so I'm not creating extra meals in my busy routine. No extra dishes. Absolutely. I love that. I wish my husband would eat leftovers. It's one of the few things that I would change about him, I feel like. Not staining as easy. Yep. Glass containers, not as toxic. Absolutely. You still want to make sure you're finding good sources of that, but I find they're safer. Disposable containers are linked with toxic flame retardants. I have not looked into that. I would have to look into that a little bit more. But with that, I say do your own research, do what you feel good about with that. I've seen a high level on that. Any disposable containers I'm getting from like a takeout restaurant or things like that, I tend to not microwave it. And even if they say microwave safe, I'm a glass girly. I like to microwave and heat things up in glass, stainless steel. I'll throw things in my cast iron pan to crisp them up again. A lot of the time, cast iron's one of my best friends. The cooker that refrigerates until it's time to start cooking is sous vide. It's SUVIE. They have a starchy attachment as well that will cook your rices, pastas. You can do oatmeal for in the morning, everything like that. Thank you for those who popped that into the chat. I don't know if anybody on here has a sous vide. My sister uses it all the time, and she said it was a game changer for her. I think they do have a guarantee that if you don't like it, you can send it back, but you would have to look into that, so don't quote me on that. Friend group idea is one of my best things. I love it. We have so much fun doing it with friends, family, coworkers. So that's a great thing to do. Thank you guys. I'm so glad you're getting great ideas. Fruit in my salad is the best. Fruit's coming back into season with spring. I'll also throw in freeze-dried fruit sometimes. That's a great way to add some different flavors, some different textures. My favorite is freeze-dried mandarin oranges because they soak up the dressing and get a little bit juicy. Freeze-dried strawberries can add a great sweetness as well. You can do that with salads, with breakfasts, different sauces sometimes too. Any other questions? Anything else we can answer? I know we've still got about a minute or so. Thank you for joining. If not, if you guys want to pop off, but we are so glad you were here. And you can also email any questions you have to our wellness email. It's just wellness@gbsbenefits.com. Advice on how to freeze things well. Yes, Tiffany, thanks for throwing that in. Definitely a lot of resources from last week on that as well, but the biggest thing is making sure they're going to be airtight, trying to reduce the air you're getting in there, and then making sure they're in a good freezer safe container. So with that, I love my vacuum sealer and my vacuum seal bags, so I can get all the air out that I can. If I can't do that, if I'm doing like a burrito or a breakfast sandwich, I'll wrap it in parchment paper, then wrap it in foil when I'm putting it in there, or I'm finding a container that barely fits what I want. So I will get I have small single serving portion containers for say lasagna, and I freeze in that so that I only have a teeny bit of extra airspace in there. And then I always try to freeze it as fast as I can so that it gets solid quickly. And then I stack it up. When you're putting things in the freezer, make sure you're labeling it. And then I like to have a list of what's in my freezer so I know what's in there. So definitely check out week 1 too. That will go out and that will have a lot more tips than that quick crash course in 30 seconds. Thank you guys. Any other questions? Happy to answer. Like I said, you can also email us and do another one. I will see what I can do to get on the docket again for this. It's something I love to do. I love to talk about it. Have lots of hacks, lots of things that I've done over the years, lots of favorite recipes. So thank you guys for joining. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so have a great day. Enjoy the hopefully sunshine. We've got sunshine here. And find a great meal to meal prep. Have a party, get your friends, family involved, and put on the tunes. It's the most fun way to get a variety of delicious foods. So thank you all for joining. Air fryer is a great reheater option. Yes, I have not invested in one yet because I'm scared of how many chicken nuggets I will eat.